And if you're ready, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Like I said, we may have a few showing up later. They did say they would try and come. But yeah, for the time being, we'll go ahead and get started. Is it normal for your particular part of the tradition to light incense on your own?
Yes.
Okay. Do feel free as soon as I've lit the candles and the central our service tends to be, we tend to do a little bit of seated meditation. Are you familiar with, comfortable with meditation?
I know I'm not familiar with guides, but
We'll do just a little bit. I'll kind of explain what we're doing, and then we'll do just a tiny little bit of meditation. Again, if it's not part of your own tradition, don't feel like you have to participate. But we do leave the option open for those who are Okay. So with Sunday being Mother's Day for the U.S., today it only makes sense to bring up the Buddha's mothers, both of them. What we'll be doing is, I do have a translation. I was looking for the better one, but I didn't see my copy of it anywhere in there. I'll have to go back and fix that for next time. We do have translations of the Buddha's mother's enlightenment verse. But before we can get to that, we have to explain what happened. Like, where did this all come from? So we're going to be talking about the Buddha's mother's, plural, and all of the things that went down to make that, make us talk about both of them. So in a bit, we will read his mother's verse, but for now, first we have to start with the story, right? So the story is quite simple. It's not a good story, or it's kind of a sad story. I won't say it's a bad story. It's a good story. It's just very sad. So as the Buddha's mother was about to give birth, she was doing what was culturally appropriate at the time, and she was going back to her mother's house to give birth, with her mother present. Didn't quite make it there, right? She got to this beautiful grove of these trees that were just unbelievably well scented. There's such a gorgeous scent. These are sal trees or sala trees, depending on who's doing the transliterating. And they're very, very, very fragrant, very, very powerful scent. And she said, okay, we're going to stop here and rest for a little bit, and I'm going to take in, I'm going to rest, I'm going to take in a little bit of this fragrance. And as she did, right, it came time, right? She went into labor right then and there, and all of a sudden, according to the story, out from her side, all of a sudden there was little baby Buddha. And little baby Buddha did not touch the ground, right? So as soon as he was born, the Devas kind of said, okay, he does not touch the ground. So they made sure that they had their hands, they're kind of like spirit hands, because that's what the Devas are. They're kind of like, I won't call them deities, but they're higher level spirits. And so they're holding little Buddha as mother recuperates from giving birth. And as she does so, right, it's a great time, right? The Buddha is said to have, and we'll go into this maybe a couple weeks down the road when we do Vesak. The king of the Nagas was said to have sent a warm rain, and then a cool rain, and then a rain of flowers. And everybody was just overjoyed. It was a great time, right? She sent word back to her husband, who is the king, right? Hey, you have a son. And all of a sudden, the king is like, yes, this is great, right? So there's this great feast. And mother and baby, of course, didn't make it back home to her mother's house, right? So instead, they went back home, and they went to this feast, and everybody was overjoyed. Okay, we've got a new crown prince. He's all cool. Everything's good. Well, 7 days after he was born, the Buddha's mother, her task complete, her function complete, she passed on. She did not make it past 7 days. So at 7 days, she died. Right. So what to do in this case, right? So, well, it turns out, and this was actually really good fortune, right? So it turns out that one of her sisters had also just recently given birth, and so Queen Maya, who is now dead, her sister Mahapajapati or Mahaprajapati, she was able to come in and kind of serve as the Buddha's mother, right? Nursing him, helping him, taking care of all of that. And so she effectively raised the Buddha from the time that he was born, because obviously birth mother, Queen Maya didn't make it. And we will see that the sisters had like really good communications while they were both alive. So as she's raising the Buddha, right, he grows, he becomes, the crown prince. He's learning how to be, a future king, and everything is going really, really good. And then he goes off to become a Buddha, right? He decides that the princely life is just not for him. So he says, all right, enough of that. He goes off and does his own thing, learns how to cause suffering to cease and how to work through all the suffering that we see. And then he comes back. And when he comes back, right, everybody's kind of like, okay, well, he left, but now he's back. So what's going on here? Well, his mother, Mahapajapati, she kind of understood what was going on, and she was one of the many who kind of sat through his sermon as he came back home. And over the course of time, eventually the king passed on, and what the queen did at that point, what his mother did at that point was say, okay, well, it's time for me to go be a nun. It's time for me to go in from the householder life into the homeless life, into the religious life. And so she did exactly that. She went to the Buddha and she said, look, I want to become a nun in your order. I want to learn. Learning from your son after you've taught him everything. Wonderful. Kind of a weird dynamic there, but it worked. And initially he said no. He's like, no, we don't do that. But she came with 500 other women, and at the head of these 500 women, she said, we have the capacity, we can do this thing. Let us do it. Let us join your order. Let us become nuns. And she was so convincing that the Buddha eventually said, okay, yeah, that's a thing. All right, you're nuns now. Welcome in. Right? So the Buddha's own mother becomes a nun in the Buddha's order, learns from him, and eventually she attains enlightenment in his teaching, in following his teaching. She learns how to do what he did. And that's probably one of the greatest gifts that any child can give their mother, is finding out how to help them become enlightened and transcend suffering. I wish I could do that for my mom. Sometimes. Not sometimes, all the time. Right? And so we have this beautiful story, right, where she is now a nun, and she is, over time, right, she practices, she does meditation, she does all the practices, and she becomes enlightened. And as she does so, right, as was fairly common for monks and nuns back in the Buddha's day, she left us a verse, an enlightenment verse, which is actually really, really special. And the particular translation or kind of re-envisioning of that I'm going to be reading, it doesn't quite do it perfect justice, but it does get the idea across of what she was trying to communicate with her enlightenment verse. And so I do want to read that, and that's going to be our Dharma for the day. So this is a translation. It's not the only translation, but it's a translation of Mahapajapati's enlightenment verse, the Buddha's own mother and her enlightenment verse. And what I want to do is I want to read it, and then we're going to kind of talk about it, and then we're going to read it again, and we're going to close out with the chanting of the three vows. So, Venerable Mahapajapati, she writes, or she says, I know you all. I have been your mother, your son, your father, your daughter. You see me now in my final role, kindly grandmother. It's a fine part to go out on. You might have heard how it all began, when my sister died and I took her newborn son to raise as my own. People still ask, did you know then what he would become? What can I say? What mother doesn't see a Buddha in her child? He was such a quiet boy. The first time he reached for me, the first time I held him while he slept, how could I not know? To care for all children, without exception, as though each will someday be the one to show us all the way home. This is the path. The part that I think probably could have been better translated is right there in the middle, unfortunately, or actually right there, no, it's actually right at the end. And the way that it's usually translated is, half of this verse is talking about her experience of enlightenment, and half of this verse is talking specifically about her sister, who gave birth to the Buddha, right? Her sister Maya, Queen Maya. And the verse is, it's so powerful when you read it in some of the different translations, because it really is like, Mahapajapati is sitting there and saying to her sister, in her enlightenment verse, she's saying to her sister, look at the boy we raised. Look at the boy you had and we raised. We did good, sis. We did good. And that's such a powerful little statement from the Buddha's own mother in her enlightenment verse, is saying, okay, maybe it's just a little bit of I don't want to call it pride, because it's not. It's more satisfaction than anything. It's like, we did good. We served our purpose. We lived such a fine life, and we taught him well, and now he's teaching others. This is good. We did something special, right? And to all the mothers out there across the world, this is a thing that I think they can all mothers can kind of look at it and say, all right, I did something worth doing. That was special. And she gets the opportunity to say that to her sister, right? And to kind of bring that in and say, okay, sis, we did good. We did good. And I find that so special, because she's not, especially in the slightly better translations, she does such a good job of sitting there and like not being like, oh, look at what I did, right? Look at the child I raised. He's all special. He's all cool. No, she brings her sister and says, look, you did good, we did good, right? And it's such a powerful little moment of recognizing all of the different capacities and all of the different parts of motherhood and all of the different parts of what that means, right? Both in society and in the kind of culture that she was in. Right? It says a lot about her as a nun, that she's going to sit there and not only say, this was special, I helped make that happen. But this is special, we did this thing, right? That's a very powerful statement from one mother to another, saying, yeah, we did something special, right? And I think all mothers can kind of look at Mahapajapati's example and say, okay, all right, I can see that in my own son. I can see that in my own daughter. I can see that in my own kids. We all did something special. All mothers do something special. And that's a powerful thing, right? She's not just saying, okay, I did this thing. She's saying, we did this thing. We as mothers did this thing. We made this happen. And we can take pride in it. We can take satisfaction in the fact that this is something special. Motherhood is something special. Enlightenment is something special, right? And she was so powerful in making that happen. And yet here she is saying, we did this thing, right? I really, really appreciate Mahapajapati's example. And so, yeah, for Mother's Day, that was kind of what I wanted to kind of bring out is like, hey, moms out there, Maha Pajapati can recognize it and say, we did something special. I can't. So instead, I'm going to say, you did something special. And we're proud of you, Mom. So, yeah. All right, before I start getting super long-winded over silly stuff, I'm going to put this down, and we're going to close out with chanting in the three pals. For attending.
Thank you.
We usually do so a little bit of Sangha time, questions and answers, kind of like chit chat afterwards if you're so inclined. I am going to go ahead and close out the live stream though, so we can make that happen. All right. Dharma Boots, thanks as always for watching. We'll see you guys next time.